Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show with my able-bodied co-pilot. I let him fly the plane most of the time. I'm an aging veteran pilot. This guy's a young whippersnapper who could even land a 747. No, a Airbus 380 on an aircraft carrier, third wire. Matt Wilhelm, welcome once again to the Tim May Show, my man.
Great to be with you, Tim, as always. And again, maybe not celebrating a Buckeye victory, but a lot to discuss coming out of that matchup with Nebraska.
Okay, before we get to the nitty gritty, not just even the dissection of what happened against Nebraska, but also the precursor to what's coming against Penn State, because middle of the week people want to hear as much about that as they do anything else. But that sets up the questions, right? But dude, this has been a strange college football season. I think you agree with me. Like I keep pointing out, Georgia should have been beaten by Kentucky. Kentucky
Yes.
blew it. Then whips Alabama, or excuse me, comes back on Alabama after Alabama took a huge lead, but gets beat. Then gave up 31 points to Mississippi State. Then made Texas look like what you thought Mississippi State would look at.
Yeah.
That's just one of the teams in the top four right now. Did Ohio State, in your opinion, did it just have that, headed into another once again, a battle of unbeatens, Ohio State at Penn State in Happy Valley. And thank goodness, I think for Ohio State's point of view, the game starts at noon and not 8 p.m. whiteout. But did Ohio State just have that one game that almost every team has every year that you just can't really explain except, wow, that team had your number, but you were still able to win? What's your take on coming out of the Nebraska game?
Sure. It's the one thing coming out of Nebraska, and then also, as this is midweek, looking forward to Penn State is I think you're gonna see a similar team from a toughness standpoint, centered around defense. Just like Nebraska has been, you're going to see now which quarterback will we see? Will it be Drew Aller or will it be the backup who's a little bit more of a run happy kid? But you're going to see potentially a younger quarterback like the Raiola kid who may be as much of a threat running the football as he is throwing it. And we saw that show up in our football game multiple times against Nebraska. It's tough, a team and a coach constructing a plan to manage a now second open date, after such a tough loss. And, as you and I were talking before we jumped on, it was, a couple of days to evaluate, get over, fix what happened, emotionally, mentally, and physically, what happened out there in Oregon to the number one team in the country, right? And we saw ourselves not fall too far in the polls because of the way in which that game went down. And you look at what Nebraska had happened to them, 56-7, an extremely embarrassing loss for that football team, for Matt Rule, especially given I'll say the rebuild trajectory they were on to be competitive against very good teams. And we saw Indiana, who is now, I think ranked in the top 12, a very good football team and continues to be undefeated, has not trailed 1 second in the college football season, by the way. So it was a funky game setup. I wouldn't consider it a trap game, but I think it's it's just a game that you have to remember. These are young men who are managing, some type of scholastic workload, while also emotionally coming over the loss to Oregon. I'm sure because of the current college football landscape, they're managing their NIL opportunities that they have to get out to. And in some cases, when you get a little far from playing a football game, it takes a little while for you to crank it back up. And I thought Nebraska, I watched Ryan Day's post-game press conference. I watched Matt Rule's post-game press conference. And Matt Rule was just, again, talking about how proud he was of his guys, talking about, coming out of the Indiana game and what that week of work was for them. And I think at the juncture of taking the lead, in Columbus, Ohio, in the Horseshoe, and going up on the number 2, number 3, number 4 team in the country and holding that lead, and what it meant, kind of like in a vacuum for Nebraska football was when we do it and we fight and we play great defense, even with a freshman quarterback, we can compete with anyone. So there was some validation there for them. And
Yeah.
so that's them righting some wrongs in a week.
Yeah.
And us, kind of just maybe like resting on our laurels to a certain extent and coming out of a very close victory. And we expect, and this is what us as fans call it, writers, members of the media, in some cases the players, because I'm sure they're all on social media. They see it too. We're Ohio State. We're supposed to win that game. We're supposed to blow them out. The line was, 20, 28 and a half, 21 and a half. I don't know what it was.
It was 25 or 26, but yeah.
You're supposed to do it by all accounts. And there's definitely some shock for it being 21-17. But I think more so, which I'm sure we're going to get to here in the next 20, 30 minutes, is, some of the small little things that happen in a game of why it ended up being a closer game than it actually was, that probably should have been.
I'm going to have Jacoby Boren on here in a minute. He was the center on the 2014 national championship team. He's going to give us some insight, because basically they had their big reunion last week, but the bottom line is Ohio State's going to Penn State, and that game at Penn State 2014 is where that Ohio State team found its mojo. It was a close finish. What was it, double overtime or whatever, ended with a shove sack by Joey Bosa.
Yes.
But the bottom line is we're going to get Jacoby Boren's take on that in a few minutes. But, as I look at this, I wanted to ask you this, Matt. Let's play the old war games. I don't know if you ever saw that movie or the remake of it, but DEFCON 5 to DEFCON 1. DEFCON 1 is where you're feeling pretty good about things. And DEFCON 5 is where nuclear war is imminent. And by that, I mean, I'm just talking about from an emergency status standpoint. I wanted to run these at you and answer them as briefly or as long as you want to do it. But I want to run. I'm trying to be more organized. You know what I mean? In my latter years here, or my latter podcast. But I wanted to run this by you. From a DEFCON 1 where you're feeling pretty good to a DEFCON 5, and I may have those reversed, but it doesn't really matter. We've already explained the way we're defining them. When I say offensive line, where would that light be? Would it be on 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 on the DEFCON scale? Based on what you saw against Nebraska.
Well, what I saw against Nebraska, emotionally, I'd want to go, we're probably at a 5. But that said, collectively, where we're at, because of a lot of things, and I'll be as brief as I can, we're Ohio State. We got horses in the stables. We're playing some guys who are playing for the first time. I think Coach Fry and Coach Day are shuffling guys around, trying to find is it the best 5 or is it the best players at each position? So for this one, I'm going to dial it back just a bit because I think there is some kind of panic setting in because the big games will have better players than Nebraska has on the defensive line. And so I'm going to go 3, DEFCON 3 for the offensive line.
Yeah. And real quick, just in a nutshell, Nebraska plays that 3-3-5 defense, which means nothing. It means that's what they call it in their head, but they always have 4, sometimes 5. Occasionally they had 6 guys at the line of scrimmage. It's from a matchup standpoint, as I pointed out on one of our LettermenRow.com videos, I thought they had that Seth McLaughlin and the offensive line had trouble figuring out even who the Mike linebacker was, the old pivot point of a defense. I mean, it looked like confusion a lot on just who to block or, what the set was. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Did you see that too as you watched the video of this game? Did you? I just saw guys coming free. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I did. And so that's, a 3-3-5, probably from a week in, week out standpoint is predominantly not a front that you're going to see all that often. It's almost the equivalent to, seeing, playing Navy and having to see an option, once a year. You have to be prepared for it. You have to master it. Then you have to forget it because you probably won't see it again.
Yeah.
But here's what's unique about the 3-3-5, and it's all based around your personnel, right? Is you need a dog at nose tackle, right? A guy who is likely going to line up in a 1 technique in one A gap or the other, or a 0 head up over the center, right?
Or cocked.
Right. And then you're going to have your ends, you're going to tinker with your ends alignment based around what the team likes to do schematically in the run game and the pass game. Well, and then in many cases, you're adding a backer, right? But What's unique about it, from where there may have been some confusion, is what's great about a 3-down front if you can hold up in the run game, which we saw Nebraska do, is those linemen really aren't playing a gap. They're playing and stepping to the technique of the offensive line.
Yeah.
So if the guard or center steps with their, I'll call it, say, my defensive left foot, I'm mirroring that with my left foot and pressing him back. And then I'm able to throw him, now that his momentum is going that way, and rock back and play the cutback as well. So Nebraska and Matt Rule and this, defensive coordinator, they don't commit to the 3-3-5 just because it's like, oh, it's what we do and the players need to conform. They have the personnel, and I'm sure it's a little bit in flux as they're building this. They have the personnel to do it. So I think it gives them the best opportunity to be disruptive. Gives them the best ability to play the run up front. And it gives them the best opportunity to win football games and stay in football games again. So, and you keep the 5, which keeps that kind of like umbrella from a coverage standpoint that still allows you to tinker with coverages. Yeah. Blitz guys out of the secondary if you need be. So it's a funky look. And I do think, and I'll move on, like the run game. Their ability to be disruptive in the run game.
Wait a minute, number 2 is the run game, and your DEFCON level is?
My DEFCON level for the run game is kind of probably going to coincide with the offensive line, and I'm going to stay 3.
3, yeah.
We have to run the football. Ohio State has to run the football to win a national championship. Ohio State has to run the football to beat Michigan. Ohio State has to run the football to beat Penn State. Yeah. Ohio State's going to have to run the football to beat Oregon potentially again if that opportunity exists. Okay, that is a must. You don't have the running backs that you have who, again, as we've seen in years past, if you watch Ole Miss play and you watch Ohio State play the last 3 years, Travion Henderson needs to make one guy miss. Now we just need to block the down and maybe tag up to one backer, and then these guys are good enough to make that one guy miss. And then we've talked about that before. 12 yards could be a 70-yard run simply by an angle or a shoestring tackle or stepping out of one or running away from a guy. These guys have that ability. But us not doing it forces Will Howard, and this offensive line to have to protect. And because they're at a DEFCON 3, that coincides with that's run game and pass game.
Yes.
And we saw it a little bit yesterday, without Simmons at left tackle, and now potentially another question mark. There's going to be a little bit of a reshuffle, and playing with guys in different places, it takes time to just, develop a little rapport of what's going on, with the guy next to you. And I would also say it coincides with the quarterback having confidence, being able to stand in there and confidently and not have to pull a quick trigger or a quick escape because you just don't trust the guys in front of you to protect you.
Yeah. Yeah. This is going to be an interesting week in the history of the Ohio State offensive line play, especially if they, like, for example, slide Donovan Jackson out to left tackle, which is an option they could definitely use, and slide another guy like Austin Saraveld back into the starting lineup, let's say at left guard. It's going to be an interesting week if Zen Mikulski, I understand, suffered some type of like hip injury, so that doesn't sound like it's something that goes away in a week, but developing that, gelling, I guess is the term you'd like to use more than anything else, is what's going to challenge them. Because I thought the passing game saved them, was their salvation against Nebraska, and could be their salvation at Penn State on Saturday. Where do you have the pass game in a DEFCON rating?
Pass game in a DEFCON
one,
rating
you feel good. 5, you're bringing in more troops.
5, I'm going to probably be at a 1. I feel good. I'd say maybe a 1.5, only because
1.5.
Going third. Yeah, exactly. Going 13 of 16. You like the high percentage. I guess the way the game flow went, it didn't allow the opportunity to throw the ball a little bit more. But when you're that efficient, it's like slinging around the yard. My one concern. I mean, I love it. I love the big plays. I love the Carnell Tate touchdown. And I love the Jeremiah Smith touchdown. But if you take those out, right? And I know that, of course, they happened. Yes, they did. And we took our shots and we hit them. But let's just, so you're 11 of 14, and you probably only throw for about 115, 120 yards, right? Yeah. I know that's close to 10 yards of reception or a little bit more than 10 yards of reception, but I just think that, and again, it's part of the game plan. It's part of that scheme Nebraska, came in with, was maybe, limiting Ibuka, on some of that intermediate stuff, some of the bubble screens where we're getting the ball very quickly. He catches it at 2 yards and turns it into a first down. Some of the wheel stuff, some of the stuff that we've hit with him, like the little hitches, the little zone windows that he hits, in past weeks were not available this week, and that's okay. But that's where, if those big plays don't hit, why we're at DEFCON 3 on run game and O-line is I'd love to just be able to turn around and hand the football off and go get those 4, 5, 6 yards, and potentially pop one. And we just can't do that now. And as I said, Penn State's going to be a better defense than Nebraska. And here's the one thing that I've always said, Tim, even going back in the past years when we've done this, is like, once you kind of put the template out to not stop,
Correct.
but limit, you're going to see some version of that every week moving forward until you can overcome it. And that, you're putting a lot on this, reshuffled offensive line. And so it'll be interesting to see what these coaches do, in 1 week, to have to overcome that and play a 3 versus 4 matchup on the road.
Yeah. I mean, it brought to mind, I thought Nebraska had a great defensive plan to basically, they had let's say 2 yards on either end of the line. I'm talking about Ohio State's offensive line. And then 10 yards back, there was like a region there was no man's land. I mean, in other words, Ohio State got very little out of that region where, in fact, like you said, they consider that a smorgasbord usually, and even in the passing game. And they didn't get guys to the second level running the football for the most part, like you just alleged. Like you just talked about. And then passing game wise, they also limited that. I thought it was Tony White's their defense coordinator. I thought it was extremely
well, Tim. That's what makes it. That's why we're like, again, I'm not saying I'm afraid, but that's where the concern comes. Is you would think that if the run game was hitting and that intermediate was hitting, it would open up the big play.
Yes.
So I think that's a testament just to how talented we are at wide receiver, and we have a quarterback who can deliver the football, almost in stride or only available to these great wide receivers.
Yeah. And
take those away, and where you want to live, which is running the football, moving the chains, and I know that, and hitting that intermediate, which then sets up those deep passes. It's like the deep passes were available and everything else was not, which is scary, that if a very talented Penn State football team takes away, takes away the deep and forces you to run the football, diligently and work the intermediate where they're going to, study your pass concepts and your route combinations. And if they take those away too, then what? That's where I want to see Chip Kelly and this offense really dig deep.
That's where Matt Rule and his coaching staff are scratching their heads, because they literally played really great with the exception of 2 plays and 1 drive, really. And, and like I said, they were so sold on taking that 10-yard area away that they let Ohio State get over the top on them twice. And, a guy slipped down, but he slipped down because he was trying to recover. And then Ohio State put together a great drive for the win. So what would you, number 4 on my list is, what would you do more of offensively if you were Ohio State, just in a nutshell? I personally believe with these receivers, who's Carnell Tate? He's hardly caught a ball, right? All year. And all of a sudden, he was huge. He scores a touchdown. And he has the big catch that gets the winning touchdown drive going. If you remember down they totally forgot about him. So what would you do more, Matt, if you were in Chip Kelly's shoes or Chip Kelly's seat up in the press box? What would you do more of, just in a general sense?
Of course. I think, you have to be diligent to the run game. I think, and at this juncture in the football season, and I know that Ohio State fans and we have all been enamored with, what a luxury of having, Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson.
Yeah.
At this juncture in the season, I would not, and I'm not trying to say one over the other because they're both so talented, I would give a little bit more to whoever's running hot in the football game. And I think we're trying to be too balanced, with these 2 young men. And I know they've both finished with 10 carries, but it's always been like 13 and 9 and, 12 and 8, in the past weeks as well. And I would just, well, first of all, I'll say like, I want to see more of one or the other, and then use the other one as a little bit of a change up, kind of like the NFL style of football, if that makes sense, as opposed to being so balanced. That being said, I would love one of these young men to like pull themselves ahead and be the hot hand. Like you're not the hot hand for right now. You're the hot hand. Like you're just the dude that you have to get the football to, and they've shown flashes of that, but the consistency hasn't been there. And I think the consistency of, the offensive line may be something to do with that. I would also say, like, when you go with that one back, you might also see the efficiency of Will Howard running the football. I know, inside the red zone, inside the 10-yard line, down by the goal line, we've run him successfully in past weeks. His efficiency running the football probably go up if we weren't so balanced. But then I think lastly in the pass game, really quick, I just want to see the chess pieces moved around and just out scheme, outthink, out create, as it seems like Chip Kelly did probably when he was back at Oregon, revolutionizing football, right? Yeah. That is still a thing. And we see, the Detroit Lions, do it, each and every week in the professional game. And we see, other amazing offensive minds coming up with, tinkering with scheme, tinkering with eye discipline from a defensive standpoint to pop guys free, not just flat out having better athletes doing more athletic things than the team we're playing.
Yeah. And we all know Chip Kelly's got that in him.
He does.
It's really interesting. I wanted to jump in here real quick with Jacoby Boren, just get his take on what a big game this is. Number one. Number two, this is a guy that was the cornerstone of the offensive line. It kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, I'm not sure Urban Meyer didn't. I'm not run him off. It may not be the right term, but you never quite fit that bill physically of what you want on a big time center just from a size standpoint. Yet he was one of the linchpins of a 2014 national championship run. Just get his take on what he's seen from Ohio State and catch up with him for a little bit. So let's get to my conversation with Jacoby Boren. Boy, Jacoby Boren, thanks for joining the Tim May Show, my man. It's been a long time coming. Been wanting to do this for a while, especially after I found out what was that big award you won after I think your senior year, the big award you won where you got some cash.
That was for the Campbell. I was finalist for the William V. Campbell.
Which Seth McLaughlin is a finalist for.
Yeah, I just saw that today, which is awesome to see. He's been having a great year.
Yeah, but what I liked about it was I understand, Zach told me, I think you used the money or the connection to get your pilot license.
I did. So it was a lot of fun. So I ended up getting my pilot's license after that. Didn't really have a whole lot of desire to do anything further education-wise from the MBA side, and always wanted to be a pilot. So got that, learned how to fly, and since then I've had 3 young kids and haven't really flown much. So I have to get back into the swing of things, but it was a great experience.
Yeah, I was going to say I soloed when I was 16 years old. I was identifying with you. For one time, I could identify with a starting center at Ohio State.
Yeah.
But good for you. Excuse my voice. Jacoby, number one, I want to ask you about this Ohio State football team. What you've seen the last couple of weeks, the last couple of games, what is, I don't know, what has you concerned, I guess, about the offensive line play?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's been a challenge. I mean, I think, you've had some injuries in there, right? Which is never easy. I think typically in any college offensive line, you usually have 6-7 guys consistently every year that are there and ready to play. Just candidly, I think the tough thing was coming off of that Oregon loss. I think it's a challenging loss. One thing that I think shows also the character of the team of how they respond. So I think last week was definitely, a little bit lackluster, right, from what I would have liked to seen, just from kind of the competitive edge, the toughness, and just really taking control of the game. So I think one of those items, right, that I think the team has to understand is we have 2 great running backs, right, and we have an offensive line that should be able to dominate the game, and we're just not doing it yet. So hopefully, right, we have some guys up there that'll step up, right, challenge each other. I mean, I think that's really when you look at a great line, it's not any one guy, right? It's a group of all 5 guys playing in sync. And I think the reality is when you have one guy that doesn't do their job, it's a dead play. right?
Yeah.
Especially in the running game. And so, I think what I'd like to see is just that physical edge, right? Coming out there, when it's 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, there's no questions, right? The ball's going up the middle. You're going to get a yard, 2 yards, 3 yards. And again, we haven't seen that. I'm not going to say yet, because I do think we have the guys on there to do it. We just got to show it, right? And got to go play downhill, got to get mean, and go take control of the game.
It's funny because that was you guys were there for the reunion of the 2014 national championship team. With having those guys around you, what got rekindled there from the standpoint of what you think made y'all special in 2014? And is there still, excuse me, hang on.
You're good. You want water?
No, all of a sudden my throat, I've had a cold, and now I took my flu and COVID shot at the same time the other day, like a dumbass.
Yeah.
I'll cut all this out.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, and hopefully you got freaking dumbass freaking drinking water.
No, that's okay. Wait, let's go back to you though. You had that 2014 team, all you guys were around each other with Urban there and stuff. Did it rekindle some of the thoughts of what made y'all special that year in particular?
Yeah, it did, right? I mean, so first, it was great to get the guys together, right? I mean, everyone has their own lives, right, and moves on. And so we honestly talked a lot about that, right? So Friday night specifically, talking with Coach and the rest of the team, we got everyone together for dinner. And, I think it's selflessness. I think when you really look at that team, I would say selflessness, and then literally just overcoming adversity. I mean, there's so much adversity and very steep adversity when you look at losing Braxton, right? I mean, we had a young team that year, right? So he was the leader of that team and the guy going into the season. Lose him, we got JT was unknown at that point. On top of that, we had a lot of really young, not a ton of returning starters on that team. Go in, really, lackluster game against Navy, lose at Virginia Tech, and so that's just early on. You look at that, and I think what it came down to is that guys were selfless. I mean, everybody on that team, you look back, like, there wasn't anyone that would not be willing to do or sacrifice anything to win, right, and help that team out. And I think that's something that you saw throughout the season. A really young team and guys that were bought in, loved each other, right, and were willing to do anything at all costs to win a championship. And I think you're able to see that even when you look at guys like Cardell. I mean, again, you go freaking Michigan game, right, JT. I mean, I think one of the most, the epitome of that season that a lot of people I don't think talk about is like JT. I mean, one of the toughest guys. I mean, it's odd for a quarterback, right, to be the toughest guy on the team.
Yeah.
That Michigan game, I mean, he was there and his ankle was turned the other way, snapped and everything else. He wanted to get back up, right? Like, he was like, hey, get me back up, let me go. And it's like, oh man, you're done. And I think that's just really like what it looked like on the team. And the amount of guys that played banged up, injured, they didn't care because they were going to lay it all out there and make sure that they were in a position to help their team win a championship, and we were able to get it done.
Yeah. Cardell steps in there. Next thing you know, you guys are making history. First college football playoff championship team. What do you remember real quick that came together after JT went out? Meaning that next week against Wisconsin. What's just that arching thought or memory of what really came together there?
Yeah. So I think. We talked about it all the time, right? And Coach Meyer harped on it, there's next man up, right? It's not if your opportunity comes, it's when. Yeah. So I think, listen, Cardell had a whole season. I would say Camp probably wasn't thinking about that position right at that point. But, all throughout the season, I mean, he was prepared and ready to take that opportunity when it came. Yeah. So I think leading up to the Wisconsin game is going back to what we talked a little bit earlier, right, with the O-line play this year. I mean, we were looking at it, right? We had a really strong line. We had a lot of guys. We had Zeke out there, right, running the ball. Like, we were ready. It's like, hey, kind of the root of the top is like, we got to take this and take control of the game, right? It's on us. I think one of the funniest things, right, and this is just Cardell being a goofball, is first drive, right? I think it's Devin Smith down the sideline, right, for whatever it was, 60-plus yard pass. He just has this grin on his face, right, and just goofy, right? And we always had a back and forth banter, right? And he looked at me and he goes, "I'm the daddy," right? And just gives me that. And he had that charisma to him. I think after that, it was kind of like, oh man, like, I don't want to say we didn't think we could do it, but there was a little bit of like, all right, we're going to be a little one-dimensional with what it is. And, not saying there wasn't confidence in Cardell. It was just an unknown, right, and very bizarre situation. And, when you look at that, though, after the Wisconsin game, it's like there's nobody in this country that we can't beat.
I was gonna say.
And we were able to kind of carry that on, and it was a lot of fun.
Y'all became a complete team in terms of just over-the-top passing, running with Ezekiel Elliott right on down the line. What bothers you about this team, like I'm talking about the current team, is the fact, like you talked about earlier, you got to have that running game, right, eventually. I mean, do you see the potential there for this 2014 to have a running game that it could count on?
Yeah, I mean, listen, like, you look at the guys we have up front, right? I mean, it should be now, again, injury, right, prone. I mean, I think it's tough, right, with some of those injuries that happen. But, talking about next man up, like, there's some guys in there, right, that are going to have to step up. I think that's also the opportunity, is like, the O-line's not going to look like it has all year. So I think that's really the challenge and the challenge to whoever is the one, right, and how they reshuffle the line and what they come up with, right, against Penn State is what's the dynamic, what's the identity of that offensive line going to be? I mean, there's no doubt that the talent's not there on the line. There's no doubt that the talent's not there in the backfield. I mean, the best backfield, right, and running backs in the entire country. So I would say the answer is yes, but I think the mindset has to change, right? And those guys wanting to just be aggressive, physical, and just go take control of the game.
Yeah.
I think like McLaughlin's been really high on him. I mean, I love the way he plays football, right? And so we have the leader, in my mind there with Seth, and just got to take control of it and let's go see it. I mean, the challenge is going to continue to be there, right? And I do think that is, that's going to be the difference in this team, right? Or we can go win championships, or can we run the ball consistently? If we can do that, I think, this team has a real good chance to make a run at it. And if we can't, I think it's going to be a challenge.
The irony between y'all, 14 and 24, is they're going to Penn State. It's not a white out the night situation, but it's going to be frenzied over there.
Yep.
You guys, I thought that was the victory that put y'all over the top of the roller coaster, meaning, y'all needed that one.
Yep.
It was hard fought. It was overtime, shoved sack by Joey Bosa at the end of the game, but y'all made the plays on offense when you needed them.
Yep.
With JT and stuff. I think this team is facing the same, one loss.
Yep.
You guys had one loss. I think this team is facing the same kind of challenge this week to show itself, right? I mean,
Yep.
Do you get that sense too?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, top 5 matchup as well, in Happy Valley.
3 and 4.
I think, and listen, and Penn State consistently has a really dominant, right, front seven and a good line. So, I think this is going to be a game where it's going to be won in the trenches, that's just the way it is when we line up against Penn State. And again, I think it's going to be a challenge. Now, optimistically, I was hoping to see that in Nebraska, is how do we respond against that Oregon loss? I think Nebraska was another wake-up call, so at some point it's going to be, this team's going to flip a switch, right, and just start getting a little bit of, crap to them, right, and they're going to pick it up, and they're going to stop, right, talking about it, and they're going to start doing it, right, and just really overcoming, some of the obstacles that they face, and there's no better week than Penn State this week. So, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how the team responds right after Oregon, Nebraska, and, optimistic and hope they come out strong, right, and dominate, and specifically I want to see them do it right on the offense and defensive line in that play.
I was going to say, hey, I'm going to jump real quick because time is limited always, especially with a successful business that you and your brothers are running. And I wanted to jump immediately to that, actually. Why did you 3 brothers decide to go into business together? I had 3 brothers myself. You 3, you've got 2 brothers, but and a sister, right?
Yep.
Why did y'all decide this was the way to go? And are you surprised you're sitting here right now? This business, Boren Brothers, seems to be expanding every time I look around and stuff.
Yeah, so I'd say we're really, really fortunate, right, to have an upbringing of a family that, my dad was an entrepreneur, right, my mom helped at a young age, and so, long story short, the answer is no. It's something that we always knew we wanted to do. Well, I should say Justin and I always knew we wanted to do. From a young age, we have a commercial landscape and snow business as well. that was formerly Grass Groomers and now Yellowstone Landscape that we partnered with. And so we're doing that when we were legitimately 4 or 5 years old, right? I was out shoveling snow with my dad, Justin as well. And so always been really passionate about the service business, and obviously we now have the waste business, in addition to that. And so I think it's just natural for us. I think a lot of times when you look at football, we've obviously very fortunate, all of us, to have great careers, but football's not forever, right? And so you got to do something afterwards. And business is one of those things, and specifically in the service business for us, are one of those things that we can really channel, right? And I say there's a lot of similarities to a football team and running a football team as running a service-based business. We have a lot of great men and women on the front line, right, that are the players, right? And they're driving our business every single day, and we have coaches that are helping support them and lead them. The answer is undoubtedly no. It's something that I think always worked out. I'll joke with Zach. He was always the one that was playing sports. So it'd be a snowstorm, he'd be at home with my mom drinking hot chocolate and everything else, and there. And
the pretty boy.
Yeah, exactly, right. So he had to be guided a little bit down the road on the business side. But again, I think what Zach saw and realized is Zach was so passionate about the sports side, he felt that the connection, right, of I can get the same feeling, right, and value out of running a business as I did playing football. Definitely a lot of fun. And I don't know how many people know. I was literally the Oregon game, national championship. I was messed up, right? 2 high ankle sprains and torn labrum after that game. I probably should have been recovering, and I was out plowing snow the week of the Oregon game, right, of the national championship. So always been ingrained, something I want to do. And like I said, for me specifically, it was after Notre Dame. I didn't even have any other second thought. I knew without a doubt that I wanted to run the business side, and something that I know I can do for the rest of my life.
Yeah. I want to ask you this: is NIL good or bad? I've always thought you guys, college football players, should share in the largesse. You know what I mean? Now they're finally getting around to revenue sharing, starting maybe next year. We'll see how that goes. But like what always impressed me about you guys is y'all seem to have a plan coming. After football was over, you brothers did. In one form or fashion, right? Yep. Is NIL taking that little edge away from you think college football, where so much is given already? You know what I mean? Before, I don't even know what's fair in that realm. What do you think is fair?
Yeah, so listen, I would say when all this was coming around, I think NIL is good for college football. I think what the idea of NIL originally was. I think what NIL has become has become a problem, right? So I think instead of I always go to guys like JT Barrett, right? JT Barrett had a 7-figure value at Ohio State, right? High character guy, great leader, did things the right way. He should have been a 7-figure guy because he earned it. Again, high character, high performance on the field, and he built a brand that people respected and knew. And so that's where I think NIL should exist, right, and belongs in. But I think where we're at today is, there's a miss, right? And I hope they can bring it back, because I think what we're breeding is a sense of entitlement, right? Of something's owed to these players, right? Just because they're playing football, versus, hey, I have to go earn my worth, right? And go earn the money, right, whatever it may be, and I think that's what's missing, and unfortunately, right, I think it's the system that's broken, right. These are 18-year-old kids, right, a lot of them, we're doing it to them, right. It's not the kids, right. It's us that is saying, hey, 18-year-old, you know what, you haven't played it down, but you're probably worth a couple $100,000. So I think it's a system issue, right? And I'm optimistic, and I hope they can get it figured out, because right now, I don't think it helps college football. I don't think it's good for college football, but optimistic and hope that in the years to come, they can get it to where it's, not breeding that entitlement, right, and really making guys earn their worth. And if they do, high character, right, do things the right way, right, respectful off the field and dominate on the field, great, right, go earn your money, and you deserve to get paid.
Last question. Where does toughness come from, especially around the Boren brothers? That sounds like a commercial. Also, y'all should throw in part of you taking out the trash part. Tough, too. You're a guy, you're at Ohio State. Let's face it, you had to prove yourself at Ohio State to your head coach. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You were a little bit small in his mind to play offensive line and play center. Explain the drive you had to prove I don't know if it's to prove people wrong. You just want to play football, right?
Yeah.
But explain how that just enhanced your drive, and do you look back on it with fond memories in terms of some people doubting you?
Yep.
And there you were, you end up being the linchpin on the offensive line of a national championship team.
Yep. Yeah, so for what it's worth, right? In fairness, I mean, I don't think 6'1.5" and 285, 290 pounds, right, is the epitome of a Division I national championship center. So I mean, listen, like some of that was warranted. I think at the end of the day, I think it is right that drive and that competition. I think for me growing up, like that was just the way I was raised, right? Like my parents ingrained it in us, right? Like you're either going to get better, right? You're going to win, or you lose, right? And so I was very fortunate to have that with two older brothers, right, who were very competitive, right, and parents that were very competitive, and kind of embodied that, right, throughout my life, and was put in a lot of great situations, right, at a young age from a sports and team aspect to drive that spirit. But no, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's just fun, right? I mean, I think even again now, channel back to the business side, like I think it's a fun challenge, right, going toe to toe with somebody, looking them straight online. It's a little bit different, right, in the business end than it is football, where you're lining up, nose to nose to somebody. But I think it's something to be said, right, with just winning, right, and having that mentality, that drive to succeed. And for me personally, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe the coaches, right, were smart and they kind of knew where I was at. But yeah, I mean, when you told me, hey, no, you can't do it, I mean, it was definitely challenging me and maybe a little bit spiteful to kind of say, like, no, screw you, like, I'm going to show you I can do it, right? And it doesn't really matter, right, whether it's size, short of size, right, strength, speed, whatever it may be. But I think that's life, right? Like, everybody has a genetic potential, right, with where you're at, and some of that might be mentally, physically, right? Whatever it is, it's, what do you do with the, with the gifts that you have to maximize, right, your ability to have an impact in life, in sports, whatever it may be that you're passionate about.
Jacoby Boren, thanks for jumping on the Tim May Show, my man. It's been a long time coming. I was very much looking forward to it, and now people know why. Yeah,
appreciate your time, Tim. It's always great seeing you and catching up.
Well, I appreciate Jacoby joining me, man. Trying to put that together. It took us a little while because he and his brothers have a going concern with that Boren waste management is what I call it. I mean, they parlayed, didn't they, Matt?
They did. They took their father's success, and all three of those boys learned from him and turned it into multiple successful businesses.
Absolutely. And considering their father went to Michigan, was one of Bo Schembechler's favorite players of all time, that just tells you how much that team, that family team swung, right?
Absolutely. And also just goes to show, I'll say, what the 2010s of Ohio State football represented, to not have all those boys being maize and blue, but yet all come wear the scarlet and gray. Yeah,
sometimes people see the light, sometimes they don't.
That's right.
But getting back to when I was giving you the DEFCON thing, what would you do more? Let's get to the run defense. Run defense from a DEFCON 1 to 5. 1 meaning you're feeling good about it. DEFCON 5, man the defenses, so to speak. How do you feel about the run defense at this moment?
I feel pretty good about. I'm gonna go DEFCON 1. I can't necessarily say that any opponents. I know that Oregon ran for over 100 yards for the first time. It felt like yesterday. I'm sorry. Last week against Nebraska, that
it's
they
not even yesterday.
Down.
We're just those are Freudians. Those are called Freudians. Go ahead.
But it's just they buckled down. They played well. The one thing that I know is a thing, and this is also an NFL thing that Ohio State seems to do, is we have our run stopping group and we have our pass rushing group, right?
Yeah.
And we'll get to pass rush here, I'm sure, in a minute, from a DEFCON standpoint. So I'm going to go with 1, but I just think Ty Leak and Ty Hamilton, when they're in there, they're dogs. They're physical. They're hard to block. They're extremely disruptive. Which, as a former linebacker, regardless of what scheme you're playing in, if you have disruptive defensive tackles, your Mike linebacker in most cases should be making a lot of tackles, which Cody Simon does and makes a lot of plays, showing up at or around the line of scrimmage, very aggressive, very angry, and getting guys to the ground.
Yeah, and real quick, I mean, I'm standing on the field for the last Nebraska's last possession. I'm literally on the Nebraska side, but I'm literally 20 yards, 25 yards away from the action. I want to tell you the ferocity I saw in Ohio State's defense because the game was still in the balance. Are we kidding me? We're talking about a 21-17 lead. The game was still in the balance, and the ferocity that JT Tuimoloau and Ty Hamilton and those guys brought from a defensive line standpoint, and then Cody Simon, in my opinion, his finest hour so far. I mean, he had that great tackle on the goal line, on that great goal line stand they had earlier in the game.
Yes.
Dude, that's 2 goal line stands in 2 games. That's pretty remarkable. But he had a great play from the really sort of the semi backside, but then he made two tackles on screens, quick screens, just threw the guy to the ground. I mean, it was, and I kept the screen game as part of the run game. I don't know if you do or not,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
but the bottom line is it was really cool to sit there and watch that happen. And then Dylan Raiola was kind of discombobulated on his last pass and throws it right to Jordan Hancock because he and the receiver weren't on the same page. And Jordan Hancock catches the ball and game over. But the bottom line, I was impressed by the ferocity there. Now, I think most people are, even me, I'm sitting there going, from a pass defense standpoint, which always starts with the pass rush, right? Always.
Absolutely.
Why isn't it like that on pass rush plays? I mean, and I know why, because number one, you got a quarterback that can run. Matter of fact, Dylan Raiola kept them in the game early by running.
Yeah.
So you can't just like tee off on guys like you do in the NFL, because a guy like Patrick Mahomes makes you pay for that. You know what I mean?
He does.
A guy like Dylan Raiola. Now, this Pribula guy, they may be going against Penn State's backup quarterback, as we all saw on Saturday night, has the wheels to kind of make some things happen and stuff. But explain why in your mind, maybe the pass rush hadn't been there, and is there some blame to go there?
I'm not necessarily one to again, we place blame. We can place blame and be negative, as much as we want on all the little quirks within a football
These guys
game.
are pro football players now.
Correct. Yes. The one thing that I will state, and again, I'm going to go from a pass rush and a pass defense DEFCON. I'm going to put them on DEFCON 2.
Okay.
Just because they have not, like, they're good and kind of, I think they're still a work in progress. And the reason why I say that is, early in that football game, even with Raiola escaping, you could see Jim Knowles' dedicated effort to be 4 down and stunt in game, loopers, kind of creating lanes, which, Nebraska picked up, and Raiola just took off and ran in situations. You also saw, Cody Simon, like 2 yards mugged right over the center, stunts in games, and then he's kind of like a spy. Eventually, Dylan Raiola still, got some yards when they picked that up, and there was patience. But when a defense gets really good, and when these guys go from DEFCON 2 to DEFCON 1 and they're good or they're solid, you marry up the coverage being tight, and we call it, it's like coach speech, like you cover long. You got to cover a long time. And I would say the same for the front end. The front end, with the offensive lines that we're seeing, because of, in some cases, the transfer portal, there is no weak link, team who's starting a redshirt freshman and, playing for his first time. You're getting any holes they have. They're going to get guys with size, with great feet, with great punch that have 20 starts under their belt.
Yeah.
And they're filling in those holes to protect this young quarterback and be able to deliver the football to these skillful players. So they're able to pick up some of these stunts. But the one thing I think has been missing, and it's again, it's not against any one individual, but to kind of single out, JTT and Sawyer, it's like we've been so spoiled with the Bosa boys and with Chase Young and the defensive ends we've had, and in the past, to just like win on the edge in one-on-one against the tackle, or even maybe a chipping, tight end or running back, and deliver the sacks, deliver the pressure, deliver the rush, the QB hurry that forces a high throw, a throw into the ground, and a bad throw that becomes an interception, whatever it may be. Not only that consistently, but that in big moments.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we're missing. And I think Jim Knowles is going to keep digging in and manufacturing and thinking up and drawing up based on, where the quarterback likes to escape. Where does he like to throw from? That's the one thing also from a study standpoint, like, where is a quarterback, as you break them down throughout the week, where is he most efficient? He's most efficient at this spot, or stepping up and to the right, stepping up and to the left. And then what you do is you build a plan to force him anywhere but that spot, so his efficiency plummets.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're kind of like in the middle of right now. And I think that, and again, I don't know it. You'll probably know better than me because you're down in the area, but like the little bit of, and I don't want to say tension, but like the Larry Johnson way of doing things and the Jim Knowles way of doing things might not have been completely collaborative early in the season. But we're seeing, a combination of those 4-man and now 5-man rushes. And I think it's also worth pointing out that all 3 sacks we delivered against Nebraska came with a 5th man adding to the rush in some capacity, which does causes confusions, puts someone more in a one-on-one situation. And I think Ty Hamilton and JTT all delivered sacks in their own right.
Yeah, exactly. Give them a conundrum is what I like to say. I mean, meaning give them something, give the offensive line something to deal with and think about. And then, but you got to cover your bases too, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, you can't let a quarterback just keep running the ball for these 8, 10, 12-yard
Dude,
gains.
honestly, as a
Those are
defensive
killers.
player, it is the most defeating thing
Yeah.
in the world when you do cover long and you take away their great playmakers down the football field, whether it's a tight end or 3 wide receivers or 4 wide receivers, and you cover them up, and that quarterback squirts out somewhere and gets just enough to, again, he gets just enough to get the first down, which is defeating, and he gets either out of bounds or slides, so you can't even hit him.
Right.
To deliver that blow to the quarterback, is that untouchable, unicorn in today's football. So it's a double negative, and it's exhausting, and I think what we're seeing with our inability, it's like that yin and yang from a football standpoint is like with our inability to run the football and own and I know we may have had the football more than Nebraska did. I didn't check that stat, but our inability to run the football consistently and bleed the game and bludgeon the defense and then pick them apart in the pass game with Will Howard and our weapons, in the wide receiver room, you're forcing the defense to have to bow up, which I had no problem with, especially in 2002. That's just what it was, right? It was Claret and Krenzel, you know what I mean? Krenzel, being judicious in the pass game, and Claret and Lydell Ross just, running the football on the ground. And it's how we were going to win football games. And that's the one thing that, maybe games like this past week are going to be, again, wouldn't be surprised going to Happy Valley that if it's going to be it's not going to be, could it be 35-34, 35-31? Sure. My money is that it's going to be, in the 20s, and there's not going to be a lot of big plays, and it's going to be a little bit more strategic by both sides.
Yeah. Plus, even for the fans, it's going to be tough because there's a presidential candidate, at least one showing up, which means talk about DEFCON 5. You may get in line at 7:30 and get to your seat about fourth quarter. But I digress. Real quick, I want your Ballywick linebacker play in particular. Have you been impressed, or what impressed may not be the right word, because Arvell Reese obviously got that targeting call against him on that same possession, the last possession. That was a strange possession. But where are you with linebacker play at this moment, heading into at this juncture? Is the biggest game of the year so far?
Sure. I'm going to also be around DEFCON 1.5 for them. Is there cause for slight concern? Sure. I think, what that is, truthfully, and again, he doesn't call the plays, is I thought Sonny Styles would be making more splash plays, honestly. Does he make one a game? Yeah. But for a player who's kind of like, in his third year, has gone from, safety to kind of walk out kind of hybrid nickel to now, a full-time linebacker. Yeah. And here's the other thing I'll say. He's out in space where he should be able to be as good of an athlete as he's covering, unless it's like a 5-star, 4-star receiver. It's tight ends, it's running backs, it's being slippery and unblockable in run game fits against big heavy set guys. I thought that was going to be a little bit more of an advantage. And I also thought, and this is where I said he doesn't control the play call, is I actually thought he'd be much more of a chess piece defensively, where Jim Knowles would like tinker with him and move him around, mugging him, walking him on the edge, starting him high, walking down low, and then running to trap coverage, and maybe getting under a dig or getting under a comeback of some sort. I just thought he'd be a bigger chess piece, as much of an athlete that he is. But in some cases that might go against his scheme. And the other thing I would also say is like maybe he's just like, and I'm not discounting anything, but like maybe he just can't handle that, from a mental, like all like being moved around and not just being able to play. He's the weak side linebacker. I'm going to line up to the weak side when we make a front call, right?
Yeah.
And just having to like move around and monkey around. He might just be a player that goes, yeah, I'd like to kind of be in and around where I'm going to end up and play coverage or, have to fit and not be moving around. That's also a thing.
Yeah. Be there for the cutback, That's interesting because I don't know why. I just think there's more things coming from Jim Knowles this week. I mean, I just got a sense there is going to be, because you got to change. Obviously, you got to change things up a little bit. You clearly want to play some things that have been effective against Penn State, like Wisconsin in the first half had a pretty good game, but boy, didn't adjust well when Allard had to leave the game and that Pribula guy came on.
That's key. That's a massive key.
Yeah. Well, you saw Texas A&M. You saw Texas A&M do the same thing.
Correct. So that's a
massive
key that now you have a half of football to study. And I think so the way in which the game would look with Drew Aller, that's the big, talk about a conundrum, is not knowing who's playing actually works against Ohio State.
Yeah.
Because we have to spend 50% of our time, preparing for Drew Aller, which is a much more balanced run pass, down the field, pro style passing game in Penn State's, terms of offensive scheme. And then you flip it to so much more conservative. You saw, and I watched most of the Penn State, some of the shovel passes, some of the underneath stuff to 44, some of the, again, 44 takes a snap, to get get a first down and 4th and 1 so that the new quarterback doesn't have to, all these little, intricate layers that you now have to, turn over, study, get your guys ready for. And then also you show up, or whenever they designate, who's, I call it inactive or active, whether he's playing or not, probably is going to come down to like early game, like warmups, is you have to erase 50% of what you learned this week and maximize the 50% that you prepared for the other guy, whatever that might be, and then go out and do it.
When we were little boys growing up, the 4A boys and everybody else, of course, having 4 football players, so to speak, on a Saturday morning, when we were in Lufkin, Texas, trying to get up a game with somebody, obviously everybody ended up at our house, and my favorite times was when we were playing basically goal line defense against each other. I mean, you know what I mean? Where you'd line up and there'd be 6 guys on this side, 6 guys on that side, and you had to go 10 yards to score a touchdown. You knew where everything was. You knew what had to happen now was, hey, Tim, quit crying and get in there and hit somebody. You know what I mean? Type thing.
I do.
My big brother Ben, he pulled no punches. But it's so different now, times a million, on what players have to have in their brain, but you can't get away from the basic stuff. And Penn State's going to run some base stuff at you also to test your virility or whatever term you want to call it, right?
And even more so with the backup quarterback.
Yes.
They're going to test you. They're going to test your physicality. They're going to test, can you stop the run? Because the Singleton kid is a great runner.
Yes.
He's a tough player. The way that they use 44, and his name escapes me right now.
Yeah, me too. But I know.
He's one of the top tight ends in the country. The way they use him as a chess piece. Why on, why flex, why off. He comes and smacks in the run game. He boots the next play. There's just a lot of. It's a very again, I said pro style. It's a very pro style offense. The way they use 44 is very similar, not to the capacity that the Chiefs use Travis Kelce. He's a great athlete. You got to get him the football. And I think it takes a lot of pressure off of either the young quarterback or even Drew Aller to have to drop back 35, 40 times against a very good defense and have to deliver the football down the field.
Hey, when they lined up side by side there in the second half, one play in particular, and they snapped it. I think they snapped it to 44 instead of Pribula. Put me in your eyes, because you were on the other side of the line there for so many years. What are you telling yourself because you've got enough of an angle to see that 44 is lined up behind, I think it was 44, is lined up behind the center. I mean, in a pistol depth.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing? What are you telling yourself, and what are you screaming to everybody else?
Well, first of all, the plays that they can run are probably power or counter or some type of lead, right? Lead insert or some type of ISO. We should know that. And what it also gives off, which everyone's prepared for in some capacity in the new age of football since Gus Malzahn was at Auburn with Cam Newton, is you like the wildcat triggers your brain.
Yeah.
Because wildcat is limited, not anymore, not so much anymore, but was limited to power counter, quarterback ISO, some type of, or insert. Now there's, and this is the other layer that you bake in, can you run some type of power read or zone read, with 44, where you create a little, guessing by, especially it slows down JTT and Jack Sawyer on the edges to have to play, run, or the jet motion. Then you get the puller with the kick out or turns up in on the backer, and all you don't have a 185-pound, 6'1" quarterback running downhill. You've got a 6'3", 250-pound tight end carrying the football running downhill on you. And in short yardage situations, I'm sure Penn State's going to expound, that if they feel comfortable with it and him catching the shotgun snap and handling the ball appropriately, they're going to expound on that and force Ohio State to defend the layers within that scheme.
Yeah. Is it more than anything else, is the mindset when that's presented to you as a possibility? Is it just everybody play your responsibility, don't chase?
Yes.
Is that obviously it sounds easy, but they've got guys blocking too. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You
should be. It's the mentality. So the one other layer that it's like having the quarterback run the football, which is, we know as Ohio State fans with JT Barrett, gosh, we did that for 4 years with Urban Meyer here. It adds a gap that you have to defend because now the running back has to be accounted for. Either, gosh, if he's flexed out, you got to have a body over there, right? Because they could throw it. Can they? Sure. Will they? Probably not. So then you add him as a blocker and it creates one more gap for you to defend, which means you have to bring one more hat to the party. So that is a strategy, that they can use. But to your point, you should be ready for it. You should be ready they're only going to have like an A and a B and a C, and potentially like a gadget or a trick play off of it to try to catch you. Once they've run A and B, they're gonna throw Z at you, which is a double reverse pass, flea flicker. What I mean? To test your eye discipline. And to your point about backyard football, down inside the goal line, down inside the 10-yard line, and you watch football every week. When the football gets down there, the creativity, because it is confined space, the creativity by these offensive coaches and the players' ability to go out and execute is really a test of discipline within the defense. Of, am I playing my technique and my gap or responsibility? And more so than anything, it's your eye discipline. They want to show something in your face while there's something running around you, behind you, and all it is, the accuracy of quarterbacks is up. The athletic ability of the wide receivers is at all-time high level with, the back shoulder throws, the back corner fades, and these guys toe tapping for touchdowns is like nothing we've ever seen before.
Yeah. Hey, just two quickies before we're done. Number one, as a linebacker, for example, when you were in the middle, did you become aware of when an offensive lineman is not trying to get downfield, as opposed to on some plays, immediately he's trying to get downfield, trying to get to the second level, which tells you it's a run play, not a pass play, because they watch the ineligible receivers downfield really tightly now.
Yeah.
I mean, can you process all of that as in, hey, I'm here and they're running, I'm seeing this, but this looks like a pass based on how these guys in front of me, I'm seeing in my peripheral vision are playing. Can you make yourself aware of all of that?
It's very tough. It's the reason why the teams that run RPO efficiently are so dangerous. And the reason why I say that is because, as a linebacker, you're getting a run read from all your keys, which means low hats. Offensive linemen are drive blocking 1,000, 2,000. And so you have to run fit as if the quarterback can give the football. And then next thing you know, it's like, and the ball just gets whizzed, to a slant by number 2 outside, and that's where, like, again, I keep saying it, it's, but it's like, it's the immense key to defense is eye discipline. If you're looking at the right things, there's a really high chance that your body does the right thing. If you're banking on your body doing the right thing and you've got bad eyes looking at the wrong thing, you're going to do the wrong thing more often than not. So it is, so yes, you're reading high hat, low hat, back when I played shoot, you were reading the triangle, guard, guard, fullback, guard, but there really are no fullbacks anymore. So it's high hat, low hat. But then that's why I also see, to your point about ineligible men downfield, is like when you have great eye discipline by the backers and secondary and they close those slant windows or that RPO window, you see a quarterback hold the football,
Yeah.
not give, hold it, and hold it and hold it and hold it. And by then, you got linemen drive blocking, 8 yards downfield, and it's a penalty on them.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, last thing I wanted to ask you, landmarks. I love that term, but I've always been intrigued by offenses looking for landmarks in the defensive, where you go here to go there and stuff like that. Man, I swear it looked like the plan, and I wanted to ask you this, having played so many games, because I do believe this is used quite frequently. I thought it got used by Nebraska on Saturday, is using the umpire in the middle of the defense to basically pick. Yeah, Caleb Downs got picked by the umpire, for example, on Saturday. He had interaction with the umpire several times, like when he was rolling up instead of like staying back, and they had another guy on the backside, which I thought they did a good job for the most part of keeping a guy on the backside and not getting burned too badly in that regard. But did you see that as part and parcel to an offense sometimes of using that umpire to pick you or to pick a defender?
In my career,
run to him and then go.
I probably run into him one time, when I'm like maybe in mine again, it wasn't like a wide receiver cross, it was like a tight end cross.
Yeah.
Where he's standing right there and picks you, and there goes your coverage. It is absolutely to make it a fact. It is absolutely used by offenses on any type of mesh, crossing concept where you're already in chase mode, And in many cases, you'll see, the sit down, and then the crosser go, and it's basically meant to impede the chaser, from staying on the hip of the receiver. But in that case, it is. I mean, you're adding another, like, it can't be a pass interference call, right? Because it's the referee. You're adding another call. It's a pillar, or right in the middle of the field that if you want to use, is available to use strategically.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's Matt Wilhelm, and summing it up as usual with quite aplomb. Matt Wilhelm, thank you once again for joining the Tim May Show as the able-bodied co-pilot who does most of the flying while I enjoy. Yes, we still give out peanuts on Tim May Airlines. But hey, man, this is going to be interesting coming back next week.
Is.
Talk about what we see, what we don't see, whether Ohio State makes that step, whether the offensive line. I think this is it's kind of a referendum game, I think, for Justin Fry and that offensive line. Justin Fry, the offensive line coach, and that offensive line. I don't know if you agree or not, but
I think not only that, I hate to say it, but and I know that there's still so many games to play, right, of importance, but you can't say if you potentially lose this football game that all your goals are still attainable, because you do not control your own destiny at this point anymore. Right. And in some cases you don't right now. You don't right now. I mean, you don't right now. You wouldn't, because Penn State would would be undefeated. If they were to lose down the stretch, they'd own the head to head, So this is, critical. You say Justin Fry. I mean, I think this is like, does a 2-loss football team end up in the Big Ten championship game? I don't know. And so you don't even have that opportunity to earn that bye in the 12-team college football playoff. And I think, and lastly, it's not that I don't think, as long as all goes well, beyond this, but Indiana's tough, still on our schedule. That team up north, regardless of what they're doing and what we're doing, it's still going to be a game. We're still going to have to go do it and win it. So it's very interesting to see. But you also undo a lot of these warts that we're talking about a 1-loss Ohio State football team if you go up to Happy Valley and win this game. And I think, rightfully so, you could probably, immediately jump to number 2 in the polls behind, the Oregon team that we lost to just by a point.
I agree. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're looking for is the W anymore. Who cares what the spread says? Who cares what the final spread is? You're looking for the W. And of course, every midweek, you're looking for the W, as in Wilhelm, here on the Tim May Show. Matt, once again, thanks for joining me, my man.
My pleasure, Tim. Thank you.
And until next week, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you then.